Good morning, Composition 2. Once again, this lecture is a little bit late. This week was absolutely crazy with all the things that were happening personally and professionally. I gave 4 midterms this week, so they took priority over this video lecture. So sorry for its late delivery. Also, I was going through the grading for all of the classes, and because of the midterms, that process was stalled. So some of you got your grades for your first assignment and some of you did not. Now, I actually could have continued sending them out, but at that point, they started coming in. The second assignment started coming in, so I thought it probably wasn't fair to give comments to people who hadn't handed in their second one yet. So that got a little bit confusing, but it's not a big deal. You're going to have one more assignment, which is going to be worth more anyway. So the first 2 are kind of warm-up assignments anyway, and they're only worth 5% each. So you shouldn't be too concerned. Just get whatever feedback I give you, try to, apply that to your next one. And on occasion, there are students that disagree with my opinion about certain things, which is fine, and you're welcome to make your own arguments. But ultimately, you have to convince me that my judgment was mistaken, which doesn't happen very often. And the reason is you probably didn't quite understand what I was commenting on or what I was advising you to do. So certainly you can, ask more questions or disagree with me and email me, and I'm going to respond to you again. And if it's still not clear exactly what I wanted you to do or what the problem was, my suggestion is that you and I talk to each other on Zoom. It's very convenient. It would only take 5 or 10 minutes. It's just like coming by my office and sitting down and saying and showing me your assignment and us looking at it together and me explaining to you what I would like you to change. And we could do the same thing over Zoom. That would be fine. So if that's the case, then you can do that. So I'm not going to give you very much homework this week. 1, because some people are still writing midterms, and 2, because I still have to catch up on the first assignment grading and other classes too. My plan is to tackle all of that this weekend, and hopefully there's no coronavirus upsurges. Everything's going well now. We're at level 1. My kids are at school. This morning I'm free to do work, and hopefully that continues. So my midterms will be over and the grades will be returned to you along with comments so that you can get your feedback. Okay, let's dive into the next part of the book. The next section in the book is about amazing people. And this is a fun chapter to talk about because, especially I think because the age of our class, the average age, if you exclude me, is somewhere around 20. So all of you you're young and you're looking forward to all the things you can do in your life, and you have a lot of potential, and you're still discovering what your strong points and weak points are, and what you're interested in and how you can apply your talents. We do always admire people who do exceptional things, and there's different types of people who do different things, and we can analyze them and we can separate them, and that's part of what we will be doing for the next couple weeks. And I'm going to assign some very short, small homework related to thinking about those questions about what makes someone exceptional and what's the motivation for that, and the risks involved in it, and the reality of whether a person in fact is exceptional as we think. We want to look at this topic critically and from different angles. So I'm going to give the example today and keep it simple because it's during midterms and everybody's probably somewhat distracted by their tests, because if you haven't lived in Korea very long, you don't know, but this is the land of tests. Tests are the most important thing. I try not to laugh, but it's just not. Tests are always important, and they're stressful, and they're needed for certain things. But it seems like Korean society just wants to have a test for everything, and they think that's the most equal or fair way of doing it. But it's not always the best way of gauging somebody's ability, of course. Case in point, I'm going to write a TOEIC test this Sunday, just to prove that my English proficiency, which is a very strange thing to do after you've been a professor for 11 years. But for a certain application that I'm doing, they don't think a master's degree from McMaster University in English in a Canadian university where I grew up speaking English, and 15 years of teaching is good enough to evaluate my English. So I have to take a TOEIC test, just like you guys. So I better do well. That's all I can say. I'm not going to study, so we'll see what happens. But nonetheless, tests aren't always the best way of gauging how well you perform. In our conversation class, we don't do a written test, we do an interview, because if I give you a written test, it just doesn't seem to give an accurate impression or allow me to evaluate how you actually speak, and which is sort of the point of the class. So that's why we don't have a midterm in this class too, because an exam does evaluate how well you can do certain parts of writing, but it certainly doesn't show how you write an essay, unless you have an exam that's based on essay questions, which is what I did in university. But I will not do that to you, because those are, I have to admit, those were the most painful exams I ever wrote. So you can focus on your midterm exams, and I will just focus on this particular person's story and analyzing it, and then I'll tell you just the 2 questions that I would like you to finish for me next week. It won't take you that much time, but it's supposed to be thought-provoking. So the questions that they start out with in this chapter are: is it possible for a group of students to build an airplane? Can a person fly around the world alone in a small plane? Can a city be lost in the sand for over 1,000 years? Is Mount Everest in the Swiss Alps? Now, there's only one that you can obviously know is wrong just by your general knowledge, which is the Mount Everest is not in the Swiss Alps, it's in the Himalayas. But those questions are mainly pertaining to the idea that some people dream of these things, and some of the things are mysterious or unlikely or surprising, or seem impossible, and yet they have already been done. We're at the point in human history where things like, I want to discover a new people or a new island or something like that. It's too late. We've got satellites, and we know where everything is on the entire Earth, and there's no people that, there might be a small group of some people somewhere deep in the jungle and the mountains, but I think the chances are very small. We are finding new insects, animals, and plants that we've never discovered before, and new diseases are appearing, if you want to discover those. But as far as being an explorer, which is what I imagined I would do when I was in kindergarten, I think that unless you want to explore space, that's not a profession that I could grow up and do, because I was going to hack my way through the Amazon, but now half of it is burned down. So yeah, I don't mean to make jokes about that kind of stuff, because it's a horrible thing, but the planet is sort of completely been exposed to humanity, and so we're at a different point. This particular individual's dream is related to his childhood. Often when people have achievements that are sort of extraordinary and visionary, It's something that they start to fall in love with or focus on even when they're young. And so they're committed to it, and they start, you know, developing an interest and gaining knowledge and moving towards their goal even before they've, you know, gotten into high school. It's not like they suddenly discover a talent when they're 21 years old and create something new. It's something that they develop as they go. Bill Gates is a good example of this. He didn't even complete university. He dropped out. There's lots of stories of him. He already was a computer geek when he was in high school, and he was already hacking into the school's computers and changing the grades of pretty girls that he liked and saying, there you go, look at what I can do. And, you know, fooling around with computers, which gave him the background and the, you know, the creativity and the basic skills to walk away from Harvard and found his own company, Microsoft, and then eventually turned that company into the most valuable company in the world, and him to be personally the richest person on earth. That's an extreme example, obviously, and not something that everybody could follow. But what we're talking about here is finding something in particular that you're interested in and that you can develop talent for, and through your creativity and commitment, you can achieve something. All right, this is the whole theme of the entire chapter, and we're going to apply these kind of things to us, not just analyze them, but I want to talk about us, because I think this is helpful, especially for freshmen, to consider ultimately where you're going to go with this, right? It's not a good idea to just go through university and just try and learn a lot of things that professors teach you from books and improve your general English ability, and then come out the other end of university just more knowledgeable. Universities are not exactly for gaining skills per se, but universities are also for learning about yourself and being able to learn how to judge things and make decisions, which again, I've used this word because my professors used it all the time. It's learning how to think critically. So we have a topic here where today we're going to talk about somebody else. Next week, we're going to talk about a different type of person. And when we have the Zoom lecture, we're going to take what we said and what we learned, and we're going to discuss it together. To break up the monotony of writing every week and just studying things, we need to do some interaction. So remember, think about what I say today and do the homework, and then think about what I say next week, and then be prepared when we have our next Zoom lecture. It would be, looks like the first week in November. It's going to be November 3rd. Let me just check. Sorry. Yep. For Tuesday class, November 3rd, and for Thursday class, November 5th. We'll be talking about amazing people, and we'll be talking about, you know, achievements, goals, personal dreams, and that. We're going to make this a discussion topic. So once you've done your homework, you'll have some of your ideas already written down, and then we'll talk about them together. Okay? So this is a bit of like a kind of a lecture series here. 1, 2, 3. So this is part 1. This guy's story is very interesting. Of course, it's a true story. This National Geographic doesn't make up their stories. It's more reporting and providing information where they collect the information and present it to you. So this person's name is Barrington Irving. It's from your textbook on page 83. And he had a dream to fly. So again, I'll just read a bit of it, and then we'll discuss. Barrington Irving was the first African American to fly solo around the world. He did it in an airplane he built himself. He also started an organization to get young people interested in aviation and to teach them not to be afraid to follow their dreams. Irving was born in Jamaica in 1983. When he was 6 years old, his family moved to Miami, Florida. His parents were not rich, operated a bookstore. When Irving was not in school, He worked at the bookstore. One day, he met an airplane pilot there. Irving was only 15 at the time. The pilot took Irving to the airport where they got on a Boeing 777 airliner. The pilot let him sit in the cockpit and play with the controls. From that time, Irving was determined to fly. He wanted to do everything to make his dream come true. To make money for flying lessons, Irving took small jobs at airports after school. He studied hard and graduated from high school in 2002. Because he was such a good student, Irving got a scholarship to go to study at college, to go to college and study aviation. While Irving was in college, he wanted to share his love of flying with high school students in poor neighborhoods. He visited schools in his free time and talked about careers in aviation. Okay, and it goes on to describe how he got his pilot license, and then he started a nonprofit organization. This is all related to his background, being raised poor and knowing that what he was doing already was exceptional, right? That most people in his situation couldn't even imagine what he was doing. So he went back to the same sort of environment where he came from and started, to help those people. Even just part of the thing is they just didn't realize that they could do something that he did. He just had the vision and he followed it through. So he started, once he accomplished his goal, not even, being a commercial pilot, and then getting lots of money and then never going back to, the neighborhood where he was poor. Lots of people escape their poverty and their destitution and they become successful and they never look back. And I can understand that too, but I think most of us admire that type of person who once they get, they never forget where they came from. And once they get there, they make a conscious effort to help the others that are in the same situation like them. Imagine, see, develop, and raise themselves up to a higher level that maybe they didn't even think was possible, right? So this is the key word there is dream, right? Some people don't even dream about those things because they just don't think they can't imagine it being real. So what's the point of thinking about it? So this is part of the problem, with lots of societies, is that there's people that feel like that don't have opportunities, and they don't know how to find the opportunities. So they need some guidance or some inspiration, some motivation. And this is what this person does. So on March 23rd, 2007, which is not that long ago, he was only 23 years old. He took off from Miami in Florida and on a flight around the world. And students in the United States and all over the world watched his flight on the internet, and he talked to them by satellite phone. So after 97 days or with 43,000 kilometers, Irving became the youngest person to fly around the world and the first African American. So he's breaking through racial and age barriers, which is always a good thing to show that other people are capable of doing things. Obviously, there's usually young pilots have less experience, and the thing about a pilot, when you're flying to Canada and you find out that today, I'm Jeremy Sullivan and I will be your pilot this afternoon, and this is my second time flying an airplane from Korea to Canada. I just graduated from aviation school, and I'm feeling really excited about our flight today. How about you, cabin? Everybody in the cabin would be like, oh my God, I hope this guy, he doesn't have a very long record, so I hope, he's good. It's as opposed to a pilot who has 10,000 hours of flying experience and landed airplanes in Toronto and Incheon 500 times and never crashed. You probably rather fly with that guy than Captain Jeremy. So anyway, there's all sorts of things to discuss about this. There is the fact that why hasn't an African American person flown around the world until now, when it was done a long, long time ago by both a man and a woman of different, you know, ethnicity. Um, we can talk about the social and financial, political and racial reasons for all of that. But it has been accomplished now, and he has now become a symbol, both for multiple groups of people, for young people, for poor people, and for African Americans. He's sort of achieved, even though all of those things might be considered disadvantages for him to pursue his dream of being a pilot, he overcame all of them. Yes, and that's part of the reason this article was chosen, obviously. But as usual, National Geographic doesn't choose to talk about those specific things very much. Instead, they prefer just to tell you sort of the facts. This is what happened. This is impressive. You analyze it yourself. Now, it is common for me to hear all kinds of things from students. They usually involve excuses, and I am prone to them as well. But you might notice that this type of a person probably doesn't make very many excuses, right? Just because I'm poor, I can't do that, or just because I'm not I didn't grow up in a neighborhood where I had a chance to fly in airplanes, or because I'm an African American, or because I'm too young, I can't do it. I'm just going to do it anyway. Those cases always sort of set an example for everyone else, and it can be something even less. It can be something less, I could say, serious, but still just as inspirational. It's just like, I always used to mention Kim Yana to my Korean students because before her, I don't think anybody thought a Korean girl would win the gold medal in the figure skating, in the Olympics, for figure skating, female figure skating. She just came out of nowhere, like there wasn't really a really developed program here. She believed she had the physical talent and the mental attitude and the commitment and the training, and the, I don't know, the eloquence, all the things that she needed. She sort of put together herself, and it wasn't like Korea raised her to be a champion. It's not like playing hockey in Canada where every single boy thinks he can grow up and be, a Stanley Cup champion and play ice hockey. That's what we think. It's like any Canadian could be a professional ice hockey player. But I think when Kim Yana was young, nobody imagined that she would be, queen of the ice and win the gold medal in Vancouver. That was something only she believed. So, moving through the sets of questions at the end of this chapter, I would like you to just do page 87, discussion and critical thinking, because these sort of relate the story in the passage about his name's Barrington Irving. I was going to say Mr. Irving, but Barrington Irving's story, and just applies those questions to you. And I think, like I said, I usually do these questions with my class. Even though this is a writing class, we talk about it or write about it, because these are things that you should think about in your university career anyway. And so if you write about them and talk about them, maybe that process will help you discover or realize some things about what you should do and what you should prepare, and what direction you should head in your own life. So page 87, the discussion questions, critical thinking. Some of you are still writing pretty short answers there. Let me encourage you to write more, not just so that you can speak to me more, but because in the end on the exam, those critical thinking questions and discussion questions have to be written well with good reasons and examples, and you have to think carefully about them. And if you write 1 or 2 sentences, you're going to get 1 point out of 4 or 5, and that's going to lower your grade in the end. So I would write more, because we're going to talk about it in 2 weeks, and for the exam you're going to have to write more anyway. So I promise, I make lots of promises, and sometimes I always keep them eventually. I'm getting around to all of the grading for the composition first assignments first, and I'll send those out, and then other grades will come shortly after that. It's a grading weekend, grading party for me. So this time I'm serious. They will be coming out shortly, and I will see you again next Tuesday for the next video lecture. 2 weeks from now, Tuesday and Thursday will be separate, and we will have our respective Zoom lectures about amazing people. Thank you for listening, and have a good weekend.